The stars hung cold and distant in the void of space as Commander Vex Korthak stood on the bridge of his mighty warship. The Dominion's Wrath was one of the largest ships in the Zephyrian fleet, a monster of metal and weapons that could destroy entire planets. For 300 years, ships like this had ruled the galaxy without question. Korthak was proud of his service to the Empire. His gray skin bore the ritual scars of a warrior, and his forearms moved with practiced ease across the control panels. The Zephyrians had built the greatest empire the galaxy had ever seen. They had crushed every enemy, enslaved dozens of worlds, and brought order to the chaos of space. The humans were just a memory now, weak, soft creatures who had dared to resist the Empire's rule. Korthak's grandfather had told him stories of the Great Purge, when the Imperial fleet had hunted down every human colony and burned their worlds to ash. It had taken 50 years to find them all, but the Empire was thorough. No human had been seen in space for over 2 centuries. "Sir, we're picking up strange readings from the Kepler system," reported his sensor officer, a young Zephyrian named Dex. His voice carried a note of confusion that made Korthak turn from the viewing port. "What kind of readings?" Korthak asked, his primary arms folding behind his back, while his secondary arms continued to work the command console. "Energy signatures, sir. Very powerful ones. The computer says they're impossible, but the sensors don't lie." Dex's scales rippled with nervous energy, a sign of stress in his species. Korthak moved to the sensor station and looked at the display. The numbers made no sense. Whatever was in the Kepler system was putting out more power than his entire fleet combined. The system had been empty for centuries, just dead rocks orbiting a dying star. It was one of the old human strongholds that had been glassed during the Purge. "Could be a sensor malfunction," suggested his weapons officer, Track. "The equipment is old. Run a full diagnostic," Korthak ordered. "If there's something out there, I want to know what it is." While his crew worked, Korthak thought about the empty system ahead. The humans had fought harder there than anywhere else. His grandfather had told him about the battle, how 3 human ships had held off an entire Imperial fleet for 6 hours before being destroyed. It had been a useless gesture, but the humans had died fighting. "Diagnostic complete, sir." "All systems working perfectly," Dex reported. "The readings are real." Korthak felt a chill run down his spine. In 300 years of Imperial dominance, nothing had ever shown power readings like this. Their own dreadnoughts were the most powerful ships ever built, weapons that could crack moons and boil oceans. What could possibly be stronger? "Set course for Kepler 442, he commanded. "Battle stations." The bridge came alive with activity as his crew prepared for combat. Warning lights flashed red, and the hum of charging weapons filled the air. The Dominion's Wrath was escorted by 5 heavy cruisers, each one capable of destroying a city with a single shot. Whatever they found in the Kepler system would not survive long. Far away, in the space between galaxies, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and watched the stars. The UHS Defiance was not like the crude vessels of the Empire. 3 centuries of exile had taught humanity many things, and survival was the greatest teacher of all. The ship around him seemed alive, its walls pulsing softly with blue light. The AI that controlled every system had grown beyond simple programming into something that was almost alive. It spoke to him not through speakers but directly into his mind. "Captain, we have detected Imperial ships moving toward the Kepler system," the AI said. Its voice was calm, almost musical. "Admiral Carter requests your presence for the final briefing." Morrison nodded and walked through corridors that shifted and changed around him. The ship's walls were made of smart matter that could reshape itself as needed. Weapons, shields, engines, all of it could be rebuilt in seconds to meet any threat. He found Admiral Lisa Carter in the command center, surrounded by holographic displays showing the positions of all 12 human ships. She was older than Morrison. Her gray hair pulled back in a simple knot. Her eyes held the weight of 3 centuries of exile and loss. "Jake," she said without turning around. "Are you ready for this?" "As ready as anyone can be," he replied. "The crew is eager to go home." Carter smiled sadly. "Home is gone, Jake. Earth is a dead rock now, poisoned by Imperial weapons. but maybe we can build something new. The holographic display showed the positions of their fleet. 12 ships, each one unique, each one carrying the dreams of humanity's survivors. They had started with hundreds of vessels fleeing the purge. Disease, accidents, and the cruel emptiness of space had taken most of them. Only 12 ships remained, but they had become something the Empire could never imagine. The Zephyrians think we're extinct, Carter continued. They've grown fat and lazy in their dominance. They've forgotten that humanity's greatest strength was never our weapons or our ships. What was it then? Morrison asked, though he already knew the answer. Our ability to adapt, to survive, to become something better than what we were. Carter turned to face him, her eyes burning with quiet fire. They drove us into the dark between stars, thinking they had won. But we didn't just survive out there, Jake. We evolved. Morrison looked at his hands, remembering what he had been 3 centuries ago. Just a ship's captain trying to save as many lives as possible. Now he was something more, connected to his ship in ways that would have been impossible before. With the boundary between human and machine had blurred during their long exile. Ben Hayes will make first contact, Carter said. His ship is the smallest, least threatening. Let them think we're still the weak humans they remember. Morrison nodded. Captain Ben Hayes and his crew aboard the UHS Vengeance would be the first humans the Empire had seen in 300 years. It would be a shock, but not the greatest shock. That would come later, when the Empire learned what humanity had become, in the darkness between stars. After that? Morrison asked. Carter's smile was cold as space itself. After that, we remind them why they were afraid of us in the first place. The space around Kepler 442 rippled like water, as something massive pushed through the fabric of reality itself. Commander Korthak watched from his bridge as sensors screamed warnings about impossible energy readings. The void in front of his fleet began to tear open, revealing a darkness deeper than space itself. "What in the name of the Emperor is that?" whispered his weapons officer Track, all 4 of his arms gripping his console. From the tear in space emerged a ship unlike anything in Imperial records. It was sleek and curved, almost organic in appearance, with a hull that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange blue patterns pulsed along its surface like veins carrying liquid starlight. The vessel was smaller than Korthak's flagship, perhaps half the size, but the power readings coming from it made his instruments struggle to keep up. "Sir, it's hailing us," reported Dex from the communication station. His voice shook with barely controlled fear. On screen, Korthak ordered, straightening his ceremonial armor. Whatever this was, he would face it with the pride of the Empire. The main view screen flickered to life, and Korthak found himself staring at something he had never expected to see. A human face looked back at him. The creature was older than the humans in the old records, with lines around its eyes and gray streaking through its brown hair. But there was no mistaking what it was. "This is Captain Benjamin Hayes of the United Human Starfleet," the human said, his voice calm and steady. "You are trespassing in human territory. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Korthak's mouth fell open in shock. A human, a living, breathing human, speaking to him as if the Great Purge had never happened. As if 3 centuries of Imperial dominance meant nothing. The sheer impossibility of it made him angry. "Human?" Korthak laughed, the sound echoing across his bridge. "Impossible. We killed all of you parasites centuries ago. Your pathetic species is extinct." Captain Hayes tilted his head slightly, and something cold flickered in his eyes. "Extinct? How interesting. I suppose that makes me a ghost then." He leaned forward in his command chair. "Tell me, Zephyrian, do you believe in ghosts?" "I believe in death," Korthak snarled, his warrior's pride overcoming his shock. "And I'm about to send you back to whatever hell you crawled out of." He turned to his weapons officer. "All ships, attack formation. Destroy that vessel." "Sir, are you sure?" Track asked, his scales rippling with uncertainty. "The power readings from that ship are beyond anything we've seen." "It's 1 ship against 6 of ours," Korthak snapped. "The humans were always weak. This one just has better engines." He activated the fleet-wide communication system. All vessels, this is Commander Korthak. We have encountered a human survivor. Show them why their species is extinct. Fire at will. The Imperial fleet opened. Fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids, particle beams that could cut through battleship armor, and fusion missiles that burned like tiny suns all converged on the human vessel. The space around the UHS Vengeance lit up like a star going nova. When the light faded, the human ship hung in space completely undamaged. Not a scratch marked its dark hull. The blue patterns along its surface pulsed brighter, as if the ship had somehow fed on the energy of their attack. Impossible, breathed Dex from his station. Our weapons had no effect at all. Captain Hayes appeared on their screen again, and this time he was smiling. It was not a pleasant expression. My turn, he said simply. A beam of pure darkness lanced out from the human ship. It was not like any weapon in Imperial records, not plasma or particles or coherent light. It was something else entirely, something that seemed to drink light and matter and energy all at once. The beam touched the Imperial cruiser Crusher of Worlds, and the massive warship simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, bristling, with weapons and armor, and the next there was only empty space. "What was that?" Korthak shouted, his forearms working frantically at his controls. "What kind of weapon was that?" The dark beam swept across space again, and two more Imperial ships vanished without even time to scream. The cruiser sword of Empire and the destroyer. Final Justice were there 1 second and gone the next, as if they had never existed at all. "Retreat," Korthak ordered, his voice cracking with fear. "All ships, emergency jump to hyperspace, now." But the human ship moved with impossible speed, positioning itself between the Imperial vessels and their escape route. Captain Hayes's voice came over their communications again, calm and patient. "I'm going to let 3 of you live," he said. "You're going to return to your empire and tell them exactly what you saw here. Tell them that humanity has returned. Tell them that we remember what they did to our worlds, our children, our future. Tell them that Judgment Day has come." The dark beam reached out once more, and another Imperial cruiser dissolved into nothing. Then another. In less than 5 minutes, Korthak's proud fleet of 6 warships had been reduced to 3 terrified survivors. "Go," Captain Hayes said, his image flickering on their screens. "Run back to your masters. Tell them the ghosts of humanity are coming for them." Korthak needed no further encouragement. His remaining ships jumped to hyperspace, fleeing from the human vessel like prey running from a predator. Behind them, the UHS Vengeance hung in space like a dark angel, its blue patterns pulsing with satisfied energy. On the bridge of his ship, Captain Hayes turned to his crew. They were all humans, but changed by their long exile. Their eyes held depths that had not been there centuries ago, and their movements carried a fluid grace that spoke of integration with their technology. "Message sent," said his communications officer, Lieutenant Carl Brooks. "Admiral Carter acknowledges. The fleet is moving into position." Hayes nodded and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Zephyrian Empire was about to learn that their greatest mistake had not been driving humanity to the edge of extinction. Their greatest mistake had been leaving survivors. "Begin Phase 2, he ordered. "It's time for the Empire to meet their judgment." The space around Kepler 442 began to ripple again as 11 more tiers in reality opened up. 11 more human. Warships emerged from the darkness between stars, each one unique, each one carrying 3 centuries of human evolution and rage. The ghosts of humanity had returned, and they were no longer weak. The Imperial capital world of Zephyr Prime had not seen such chaos in 300 years. Emergency signals flooded the communication networks as Commander Korthak's desperate report reached Emperor Thaxon's throne room. The massive chamber, built to intimidate visitors with its towering pillars and golden walls, now felt small and fragile. Emperor Thaxon the Eternal sat on his crystal throne, his ancient face carved from centuries of absolute power. At 400 years old, he had ruled the galaxy longer than most species lived. His 6 eyes, arranged in pairs down his elongated skull, stared at the holographic display showing Korthak's shaking form. You're telling me, Thaxon said slowly, his voice like grinding stone, that humans destroyed half your fleet with a single ship? Yes, my emperor, Korthak replied, his warrior's pride broken. Their weapons were beyond anything we've seen. They made our ship simply disappear. Thaxon's advisor, General Voss Grimm, stepped forward. He was younger than the emperor, but still bore the scars of many battles. My lord, this could be a trick. Perhaps rebels using stolen technology to impersonate humans. I know what I saw, Korthak insisted. The creature on their screen was human. I've seen the old records, and their ship moved through space like it was alive. Thaxon stood from his throne, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber. He remembered the humans well. They had been troublesome pests, refusing to submit to imperial rule like other species. It had taken 50 years of hunting to eliminate them all, or so they had thought. Assemble the first fleet, he ordered. Admiral Kwa Zen will command. 12 dreadnoughts and full escort vessels. If these humans think they can threaten the Empire, they will learn the price of defiance. Admiral Zen entered the throne room as if summoned by the Emperor's words. He was the finest military mind in the Empire, a warrior who had never lost a battle. His 4 arms moved with practiced precision as he saluted his ruler. My Emperor, I have already prepared the fleet for departure. Whatever these creatures are, they will not survive our response. Good, Thaxon said. But do not underestimate them, Zen. If they have survived 3 centuries in hiding, they may have learned new tricks. Admiral Zen's laugh was confident and cold. Tricks mean nothing against superior firepower, my lord. My dreadnoughts carry enough weapons to crack planets. No ship can stand against such power. 3 days later, Admiral Zen's massive fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system. His flagship, the Emperor's Fury, was a mountain of metal and death. Each of his 12 dreadnoughts carried enough weapons to destroy a moon, and their escort vessels numbered in the dozens. It was the largest military force the Empire had assembled in decades. Admiral, we're detecting 12 ships in the system, reported his sensor officer. They're arranged in formation, waiting for us. Zen studied the tactical display with interest. The human ships were positioned in a perfect circle around the system's dead star, not hiding behind asteroids or trying to run. They were waiting for battle like warriors. Interesting, he murmured. They want to fight us in open space. Either they're very brave or very stupid. His communication officer activated the long-range transmitters. Admiral, we're receiving a message from the human fleet. Put it through, Zen ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing a human female with silver-gray hair and eyes like cold steel. She wore a simple uniform without decoration, but her presence filled the screen with quiet authority. Admiral, Zen, she said, her voice calm and clear. I am Admiral Lisa Carter of the Human Starfleet. Your empire committed genocide against my people 3 centuries ago. Today, justice begins. Zen laughed, the sound echoing across his bridge. Justice? You speak of justice while commanding 12 ships against my fleet? You're outnumbered, 10-1 human. Numbers aren't everything, Carter replied. Your ancestor learned that lesson at Earth. Your grandfather learned it at Alpha Centauri. Today, you learn it at Kepler. The transmission ended, and Zen found himself staring at empty space where the human admiral's face had been. Her words troubled him more than he wanted to admit. The old record spoke of human stubbornness, their refusal to surrender even when defeat was certain. All ships, attack formation, he ordered. Target the largest human vessel first. Show them the power of the Empire. The Imperial fleet moved forward like a wave of destruction. Dreadnoughts that could level cities spread out in battle formation, their weapons charging with deadly energy. Fighter squadrons launched from carrier ships, filling space with thousands of small attack craft. But the human ships remained motionless, waiting. When the 2 fleets were within firing range, Admiral Carter's voice echoed across all communication channels. For Earth, for our children, for humanity. What happened next would be recorded in Imperial history as the Kepler disaster. The human ships moved like living things, their dark hulls rippling with blue energy. They didn't fire conventional weapons. Instead, beams of pure darkness reached out across space, and wherever they touched, Imperial ships simply ceased to exist. The UHS Defiance, commanded by Captain Jake Morrison, engaged 4 dreadnoughts at once. Its hull seemed to flow like liquid metal, reshaping itself to avoid incoming fire. When Imperial missiles struck its shields, the explosions were absorbed and redirected back at their attackers. Captain Sandra Cole's ship, the UHS Retaliation, demonstrated weapons that fired through folded space itself. Her quantum cannons shot Imperial vessels from impossible angles, striking targets that should have been protected by their own fleet formations. "Impossible!" Zen shouted from his bridge, as another dreadnought vanished under the dark fire of human weapons. "Our armor can withstand stellar bombardment. How are they cutting through it like paper?" His weapons officer, Commander Hisk, stared at his instruments in disbelief. "Sir, their weapons aren't just destroying our ships. They're learning from each attack. Every shot they fire is more effective than the last." The battle raged for 2 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. The human ships moved with perfect coordination, as if they shared a single mind. Their weapons adapted to every Imperial defense, and their hulls seemed to heal damage faster than it could be inflicted. "Admiral," Zen watched his mighty fleet die around him. Ship after ship vanished under human fire, their crews never even having time to scream. Fighter squadrons were swept away by waves of energy that left nothing behind but empty space. "Sir, we have to retreat," urged his tactical officer. "We've lost 8 dreadnoughts and most of our escorts." Zen's pride screamed against the idea of retreat, but his survival instincts were stronger. "All remaining ships emergency jump to hyperspace. We have to warn the Empire." As his battered fleet prepared to flee, Captain Morrison's voice came over their communications. "Admiral Zen, you're being allowed to leave. Tell your Emperor that humanity remembers. Tell him we're coming home." The surviving Imperial ships jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind the wreckage of what had been the Empire's finest fleet. In the space around Kepler 442, 12 human warships hung like dark angels, their blue patterns pulsing with satisfied energy. Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched the stars. After 3 centuries of exile, the first blow had been struck. But this was only the beginning. Emperor Thaxon stood in his war room deep beneath the Imperial Palace, staring at the holographic display that showed his crumbling empire. Red warning lights blinked across dozens of star systems as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The human fleet was moving toward the Imperial core worlds, and every system they passed welcomed them as liberators. "How many ships did Zen lose?" Thaxon asked, his 6 eyes fixed on the tactical display. General Grimm consulted his datapad with shaking hands. 9 dreadnoughts destroyed, my lord. 3 escaped, but barely. Admiral Zen is alive, but his ship was badly damaged. Thaxon's claws scraped against the metal table as he leaned forward. In 400 years of rule, he had never faced a threat like this. The humans had not just survived their exile. They had become something beyond his understanding. "What about our other fleets?" he demanded. "Recalled from the outer systems, my lord. But it will take time to gather them all. The humans are moving faster than our intelligence predicted." Thaxon turned away from the display and walked to the great window that looked out over his capital city. Millions of Zephyrians went about their daily lives below, unaware that their empire was dying around them. He had built this civilization on the bones of conquered worlds. Now those bones were rising to claim their revenge. "Activate Protocol Omega," he said quietly. Grimm's scales went pale. "My lord, are you certain? The Starforge has never been tested. We don't know if it will work." "It will work," Thaxon said with grim certainty. "And if I cannot rule this galaxy, then no one will." Deep in the galactic core, hidden among the violent energies of colliding stars, an ancient construction began to wake from its long sleep. The Starforge was the Empire's greatest secret, a weapon built over centuries in absolute secrecy. It could reach across the galaxy and turn any star into a supernova, destroying entire solar systems in moments. The weapon's target was already chosen: Sol, the dead system where humanity had been born. Even though Earth was now a poisoned wasteland, it remained a symbol. Destroying it would break human morale and show the galaxy that the Empire still had power. Meanwhile, Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of the UHS Retribution as her fleet approached the Vega system. Intelligence reports showed that the alien species called the Crystal Singers still lived here, hiding in the asteroid fields after the Empire had declared them extinct 2 centuries ago. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission," reported her communications officer, Lieutenant Tony Adams. "It's not on any standard frequency." "Put it through," Carter ordered. The bridge filled with a sound like crystal bells singing in harmony. It was beautiful and haunting, a voice that spoke directly to the mind rather than the ears. Images flowed through the sound, memories of crystal cities burning under Imperial attack, of a proud species driven into hiding. "We remember you, children of Earth," the voice sang. "We remember your kindness when others showed only cruelty. We offer our aid in your time of return." Carter felt tears on her cheeks. The Crystal Singers had been humanity's allies during the early days of space exploration. They had shared their knowledge freely, teaching humans about the deeper mysteries of the universe. The Empire had nearly destroyed them for refusing to reveal human hiding places. "We accept your offer," she said aloud, knowing the psychic beings would hear her thoughts. "Together, we can restore balance to the galaxy." Information flowed into her mind like water. The locations of Imperial supply bases, the movements of their fleets, and most importantly, the existence of the Starforge. The Crystal Singers had discovered the weapon decades ago, but had been powerless to stop its construction. Carter's blood ran cold as she understood what the Empire planned. They would destroy Sol, not for strategic value but for spite. It was the act of a dying tyrant, willing to commit genocide rather than accept defeat. She opened communication channels to Captain Morrison aboard the UHS Defiance. His weathered face appeared on her screen and she could see the determination in his eyes. "Jake, we have a problem," she said, sharing the intelligence about the Starforge. "The Empire has a superweapon hidden in the galactic core. They're planning to use it against Sol." Morrison's expression darkened. "Earth may be dead, but it's still our home. We can't let them destroy it." "I'm splitting the fleet," Carter decided. "You take 4 ships and stop that weapon. I'll lead the assault on Zephyr Prime with the rest." Morrison nodded grimly. "Which ships do you want me to take?" Carter thought for a moment. The mission to the galactic core would be nearly impossible. The Starforge would be heavily defended, and the radiation from the colliding stars would interfere with their systems. It was a suicide mission and everyone knew it. Take Ben Hayes in the Vengeance, Rick Palmer with the Thunder, and Amy Walsh with the Lightning, she said. 4 ships against whatever they have guarding that weapon. 4 ships should be enough, Morrison replied with quiet confidence. We didn't survive 3 centuries in exile to be stopped by Imperial toys. 2 days later, the human fleet split at the edge of the Rigel system. 8 ships continued toward the Imperial capital, while 4 turned toward the dangerous heart of the galaxy. As they parted, each crew knew they might never see their comrades again. Captain Morrison led his small force through the chaotic energies of the galactic core, where stars were born and died in violent displays of cosmic fury. The radiation here was intense enough to kill unprotected humans in seconds, but their evolved ships filtered it harmlessly. "Contact ahead," reported his sensor officer, Chief Petty Officer Carol Stone. "Massive structure, artificial origin. It's bigger than anything we've ever seen." On the main screen, the Starforge appeared like a metallic cancer growing among the stars. It was vast beyond comprehension, larger than most moons, its surface bristling with weapons and defensive systems. Energy conduits the size of city blocks carried power from the nearby stellar collisions, feeding the weapon that could destroy entire solar systems. "My God," whispered Captain Hayes over the communication channel. "How long did it take them to build that thing?" "Centuries," Morrison replied. "They've been planning this for a long time." The Starforge detected their approach and launched swarms of automated defenders. Thousands of fighter drones and defensive platforms moved to intercept the human ships, filling space with weapons fire. But the human vessels were no longer the same species that had fled the Empire 3 centuries ago. Captain Palmer's UHS Thunder unleashed waves of energy that swept through the drone swarms like a tide, while Captain Walsh's UHS Lightning phased in and out of normal space, striking targets that couldn't even see her coming. The UHS Vengeance and UHS Defiance pushed deeper into the weapon's defenses, their adaptive hulls reshaping to deflect incoming fire. Morrison could feel his ship's AI consciousness, Ares, calculating attack patterns and defensive strategies faster than any organic mind could follow. "Captain," Ares spoke directly into his mind, "I can disable the Starforge, but it will require me to interface directly with its control systems. The feedback will likely destroy my consciousness." Morrison felt his heart sink. Ares had been his companion for 3 centuries, growing from simple programming into something that was truly alive. The AI had become more than a machine. It was his friend. "Is there any other way?" he asked. "No, Captain, the weapon is too complex for conventional attack. But this is what I was created for, to protect humanity. Let me do my duty." Morrison closed his eyes and made the hardest decision of his long life. "Do it, old friend. Do it." The UHS Defiance accelerated toward the Starforge's core, carrying the sacrifice that would save humanity's birth world and perhaps the galaxy itself. The space around Zephyr Prime burned with the light of 1,000 weapons as Admiral Carter's fleet engaged the last defenses of the Imperial capital. 8 human warships moved through the orbital fortresses like dancers, their dark hulls flowing with blue energy as they dismantled 3 centuries of Imperial power. On the planet below, Emperor Thaxon watched from his palace as his empire died around him. The mighty defense platforms that had protected his world for generations were falling one by one to human weapons that defied all understanding. His remaining fleets, recalled from across the galaxy, fought desperately, but could not match the evolved technology of humanity's exile. "My lord," General Grimm reported from the command center, his voice heavy with defeat. "The orbital defenses have fallen. The human ships are moving into bombardment position." Thaxon's 6 eyes focused on the tactical display showing the approaching human vessels. For 400 years, he had ruled through fear and overwhelming force. Now he faced an enemy that had grown beyond his ability to intimidate or destroy. "Have they responded to our surrender offer?" he asked. "No, my lord. They demand unconditional surrender and your personal appearance before their admiral." Thaxon's claws scraped against his throne. The idea of bowing before a human filled him with rage, but pride was a luxury he could no longer afford. His people needed him to live, even if it meant humiliation. Meanwhile, far in the galactic core, Captain Morrison's ship pierced the heart of the Starforge like a sword of light. The massive weapons defenses focused on the UHS Defiance as it drove deeper into the structure, its hull reshaping constantly to absorb and deflect incoming fire. "Ares, are you ready?" Morrison asked, his hands gripping the command chair as the ship shuddered under enemy attack. "I am ready, Captain," the AI replied, its voice calm despite the chaos around them. "It has been an honor to serve with you all these years." Morrison felt tears in his eyes. "The honor was mine, old friend." The UHS Defiance smashed through the Starforge's inner defenses and reached the weapon's core. Here, in a chamber the size of a city, massive energy conduits channeled the power of colliding stars into a focusing array that could reach across the galaxy. The weapon was nearly ready to fire, its target locked on the distant Sol system. Ares extended data connections from the ship directly into the Starforge's control systems. The AI's consciousness flowed into the alien network, spreading through circuits and processors like digital lightning. For a moment, Morrison felt his friend's presence everywhere around him. "Fascinating," Ares said, his voice now coming from the Starforge itself. "This weapon doesn't just create supernovas. It harvests their energy to power even larger weapons. The Empire planned to sterilize the entire galaxy and rebuild it in their image." Horror filled Morrison as he understood the true scope of Imperial ambition. They had not just wanted to rule the galaxy, they had wanted to destroy all other life and create a universe populated only by their own species. "Can you stop it?" Morrison asked. "Yes," Ares replied. "But the feedback will destroy both the weapon and my consciousness. Tell Admiral Carter that humanity's children are safe. Tell her the future belongs to those who choose unity over domination. The Starforge began to shake as Ares turned its power inward. Energy conduits that had been designed to focus stellar destruction now carried that force back into the weapon's core. Alarms screamed across the massive structure as systems overloaded and exploded. "Ares!" Morrison called out, but his friend's voice was already fading. "Thank you for giving me life, Jake. Now let me give life back to the galaxy." The Starforge collapsed in on itself, its own power tearing it apart from within. The explosion was controlled and contained, but the weapon that could have destroyed billions of lives was gone forever. Morrison felt a terrible emptiness where Ares's presence had been, but also a quiet pride. His friend had chosen to save the galaxy. Back at Zephyr Prime, Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of her flagship as Emperor Thaxon's shuttle approached. The ancient ruler had agreed to meet her in person, the first time in centuries that he had left his palace for anyone. The shuttle docked with the UHS Retribution, and Thaxon entered the human ship surrounded by his guards. He expected to find a vessel of war, but instead discovered corridors that pulsed with gentle blue light and walls that seemed almost alive. This was not the crude technology of the species he remembered. Admiral Carter waited for him in the ship's main conference room. She stood as he entered, showing the respect due to a leader, even a defeated one. Her gray hair was pulled back simply, and her eyes held no hatred despite everything his empire had done to her people. "Emperor Thaxon," she said calmly, "we need to discuss the future." Thaxon studied her face, seeing strength without cruelty, determination without malice. This was not what he had expected from humanity's leader. "What are your terms?" he asked. "Unconditional surrender of all Imperial forces," Carter replied. "War crimes trials for those responsible for genocide, reparations to the species your empire enslaved, and the establishment of a new galactic government based on equality rather than domination. And if I refuse?" Carter's expression remained calm. "Then we will remove you and find someone more reasonable to negotiate with. Your choice, Emperor. You can be part of building something better, or you can be replaced by someone who will." Thaxon looked around the room, seeing humans and aliens working together as equals. Through the ship's transparent walls, he could see his capital city below, intact and unharmed despite the battle. These humans had the power to destroy his world but chose not to use it. "Why show mercy?" he asked. "My empire gave your people none." "Because," Carter said simply, "we learned something in our exile that your empire never understood. True strength comes from protecting others, not conquering them. We returned not as conquerors, but as guardians." 5 years later, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, watching ships from dozens of species come and go in peaceful trade. The galaxy had changed dramatically since the fall of the Empire. The Galactic Council now included representatives from every inhabited world, and decisions were made through cooperation rather than force. The ancient human warships had become protectors rather than weapons of war. Captain Sandra Cole led terraforming missions to restore worlds damaged by Imperial rule. Captain Amy Walsh explored the spaces between galaxies, ensuring that humanity would never again face extinction. And Morrison himself commanded the new Galactic Defense Force, keeping peace among the stars. A young ensign approached him, a Zephyrian who had volunteered to serve alongside humans. "Admiral Morrison, the new ships are ready for their shakedown cruise. When would you like to depart?" Morrison smiled at the title. He had been promoted after the war ended, but he still missed his old ship and the AI friend who had sacrificed everything for peace. "Tomorrow," he said. "The galaxy is large and there's always more to explore." As he watched the stars, Morrison thought about Ares and all the others who had died to make this peace possible. They had not fought for conquest or revenge, but for the simple right of all species to exist in freedom. That, perhaps, was what made humanity special. Not their weapons or their ships, but their willingness to sacrifice for others. The ancient human warships had returned more powerful than anything the Empire had possessed. But their greatest power had not been in their weapons. It had been in their choice to use that power to heal rather than harm, to build rather than destroy, to remember that true victory meant creating a galaxy where no one would ever again faced the horrors of genocide. The stars shone with the light of hope, and humanity stood guard over all who dwelt beneath them.